My name is Jocelyn Donovan. I'm the CPNP for Niwasakandaspanteg. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today we're going to be making some baby food out of our buttercup squash. It looks a lot like an acorn squash. I actually went to the store looking for acorn squash and they didn't have any. So we're going for buttercup squash instead. And this is my first time trying it, so I'm excited to see how it tastes.
All right, folks, it's time to get cooking. So first step, we have to cut up our buttercup squash. I'm actually going to show you two different methods you can use to cook your squash. We're going to show both roasting squash and steaming squash. So here I've cut it in half, and I'm going to cut it into quarters. And I'm going to use a paring knife to get all of the seeds out. So for this squash, I'm going to cut out some chunks that we will steam. You see, it is very hard to cut. There's some good chunks for the steamer. And now we'll cut up some chunks to roast as well. See, it's hard to cut out the seeds with my big knife, so I have to use my paring knife for that part. To roast it, line a sheet pan with some parchment paper or aluminum foil, and you'll want to heat your oven to 350 degrees and lay your squash out on the paper like this to allow it to roast. Once you've cut out all your pieces, you'll need some oil. So put some oil into a dish and add it to your squash with a brush. You just brush on a little bit of oil. And now it's ready for the oven. Well, we're also going to steam some squash, so I put a little bit of water in a pot and add my steaming basket. And now I'm going to put all of our chunks of squash in there. You have to make sure you have a tight fitting lid for your pot as well, or else the steam won't get trapped. So here we go, let's cut up the rest and add it to our steaming basket so we can steam this squash as well. You'll want to steam your squash for at least 15 minutes. You'll know it's done when you can put a fork in it easily and mash it up easily. Then you'll know your squash is good and cooked. Now that our squash is good and cooked, we'll add it to our bowl and cut it up into little pieces with our paring knife so baby can pick it up by themselves to eat it. And if your baby prefers purees or mashed food, you can use a fork. Mash it up since it's so nice and soft. They can eat it more like mashed potatoes. After about 25 minutes, depending on the size, your squash should be roasted. Check it with a knife to see if it's done. If it comes out very easily, then your squash is fully cooked and you're ready to cut it up. Now the peels of a buttercup squash are edible, so you can choose to cut it into strips like that, or you can pull it off of the peel and mash it up or cut it up, whatever you and baby prefer.
All right, so we have cooked our squash in two different ways. Here is our steamed squash that we mashed up with a fork. You can see it's super smooth. You don't need to add any water or anything else. And let's see how it tastes. I'll be the baby. No, that's really good. Yeah, it tastes a lot like acorn squash, if you're more familiar with that. Because remember, this is the buttercup squash, not butternut. Yeah, it tastes a lot like acorn squash, but a bit sweeter. And I picked a sweet squash because, let's be serious, babies like something sweet. And here we have the squash that I tried to cut it into pieces for baby-led weaning. So ideally, baby should be able to pick this up. It is a little bit slippery. And they should be able to bring this to their mouths. And it squishes down very easily, so it'll be good on their little gums. Now we also roasted our squash. So, also I just want to talk about our spoons here. So I have 3 different spoons. I use all of these with my kids. This one is my favorite for the 4 to 6 month range. You notice the flat head here, and it's long and thin. That is awesome for a 5-month-old baby's mouth. So when I was feeding them a little bit, because remember, we try not to feed our babies ourselves, we try to let them feed themselves. So for this one, I would take a little scoop and bring it up to their mouth, and this shape just fits in their mouth so nicely. And this spoon is a great one for when they're teaching themselves. They just dip it themselves, bring it up to their mouths, and it's a great shape and size for them. And then this kind of spoon, when they get a bit older, this is what my 1.5-year-old uses. So the reason we don't use metal spoons with babies is that they don't have that hand-eye coordination down pat yet. And we don't want them to take a metal spoon and hit their mouths because they might damage their teeth. And even though they're baby teeth, it is still important to keep them in good condition. And for baby-led weaning, ideally they would pick up their roast squash. Let's see how this roast squash tastes. I like it better roasted. Roasting, it took a bit longer. The steaming was probably a little bit easier, but this is yummy. And the peels are edible, so you can eat the peel of a buttercup squash. Yeah, tastes nice. So see, I cut this into a very small piece because peels do tend to get stuck in babies' throats and make them cough and gag. So just try to make them very small so they swallow them more easily. So remember, let baby experiment, let baby get messy, let them get all in that food, and enjoy. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'll see you soon. Bye. Miigwech.